Fifth element. It's another element worthy of your consideration.
Ladies, gentlemen, and monsters of all ages, recently I've talked with you all about statuses and the idea of some being re-added to the series. But what if I told you there was once upon a time a sixth element in the Monster Hunter series? Well, technically there are quite a lot more than that if you count some of the combo elements like Dragon Thunder that Frontier has. But what I want to focus on is the sixth element of Monster Hunter Explore, the Earth element, as this is very much genuinely separate from everything that we've had so far. And in Explore, they not only put this on new monsters that they added in, but also reverse applied it to any monster that they thought fit the element itself, straight up recategorizing a number of pre-existing monsters. Today's talk is going to be a bit about Earth element itself, but more upon the general subject of if the main series Monster Hunter games, if Sunbreak even, should add a sixth element, what it could be, and if it should also be reverse applied to loads of previous monsters. To give you a more proper idea of what this looks like, Earth element was pretty much anything that really messes with the ground and throws it at you. More often desert and sand based creatures than not, things like Baroth, Sand Barioth specifically, Diablos, Nibblesnarf, but then there are also things like Uragon, who I guess you could also say fits a broader concept of Earth being more ore based, Duramboros, who is covered in moss, which is part of what makes it just so beautiful, but doesn't really use Earth itself as a weapon. As well, a Cantor, Green Nargacuga, who I guess is green like grass, as well as Gore and Shagaru Magala are all Earth element creatures that I find a bit less explicitly earthy than the others, but that's sort of the thing. If we were to add another element to the series, it would be reverse applied to pre-existing creatures just like this more than likely, and guaranteed people would disagree on where the line should be drawn with this. Should a creature be an Earth creature because it has an earthy aesthetic even though it doesn't really do Earth attacks? Would the monster be changed to add Earth-based attacks because it's been labeled as an Earth element creature after the fact? The community would surely wind up pretty divisive on the matter, and if insert monster here should be the new element or still be no element. That's the way that this type of thing would tend to go. For Earth specifically, because it was a Monster Hunter Explore exclusive thing, it wasn't overly fleshed out. There wasn't an Earth blight or anything to that degree, but obviously I believe any new element added to the main series would also come with a matching debuff more than likely. Interestingly, with Rise changing Ice Blight to affect your Wirebug recharge speed and not your stamina, you could really easily just shove the old ice effect onto Earth. It would sort of make sense. I mean, if clumps of dirt got stuck to you and your armor, it would definitely take a lot more effort for you to move, and so taking more stamina to do so makes sense to me. It could also make it sort of tie into the mud puddle moves, and instead have it so that Earthblight just straight up makes you move slower while you have it. Just imagine G-Rank Baroth making you slow as hell by giving you the mud debuff, then dropping the actual mud puddles on the floor on top of you, and you can barely get out of the puddle because you have slow movement speed on top of slow movement speed on top of slow movement speed, and hell, add on top of it, you could definitely make this one have a special removal condition too, like how in Monster Hunter Rise you can use wire bugs to drop water blight. Maybe something like falling from a few feet up in the air to the ground dislodges the dirt and it all falls off. I could absolutely believe something like that. In Monster Hunter Explore, every monster that was labeled as an Earth element user was weak to the Ice element, and generally every monster that was made weak to Earth was a Thunder monster, apart from some exceptions obviously, which makes a lot of sense as well. Ground tends to be the death of lightning. As for alternate elements, it really depends how abstract you want to get.
We add the element of scorched earth.
You're gonna need the element of surprise.
Is the element of psychological torment.
The human element.
There are a number of monsters that could fit within a darkness or shadow element type concept, something around the idea of playing with light and vision. Gore and Shagaru Magala, Nargacuga more lore-wise than in-game, but Lucent Nargacuga for certain in-game as well. Chameleos, Night Cloak Malfestio, hell, Gobule, technically. It's not quite as generally applicable as Earth is, where you can really just see a long list of Earth-y monsters, but a shadow or darkness type of element could definitely fit some as well, and I am including all those monsters that just can go invisible, because when you think about it, that is a way of just messing with light. As for a blight, well, it could literally affect your vision, or I think it would be sort of fun if instead of that, we just had it turn off your UI. why? Like, literally, Shadow or Darkness Blight just removes your extra information from the screen. Want to Nullberry? Well, I hope you already had it selected, or you have it in your radial menu and know where it is from muscle memory, because you cannot see your item bar anymore. You cannot see your radial menu anymore. No health on screen, stamina map, as long as the debuff's there. I just think something funky like that would be really fun, not only fitting the concept of Darkness and Shadow, but be an interesting thing to play around with. Not messing with player movement or ability in any specific way, just with player information. On top of that, any hunter weapons using Darkness or Shadow as an element would probably look exquisitely badass. Other than that, I could sort of see a unique spot made for wind as an element type, though that is heavily included as a part of ice element in the series generally, Kushala being the most interesting monster to mention here, as he was originally considered a dragon creature, with his wind being a function of his dragon abilities. Then it became clear that while he could infuse the tornadoes with said dragon energy, it was not the dragon energy that caused the tornadoes to tornado. In fact, Kushala has the interesting effect of applying different elements with his tornadoes depending on what terrain he is in. In Monster Hunter World, you could even get him to make fire tornadoes in combination with Lunastra, which to me clearly shows that wind and air pressure are quite distinct from any other individual element in the series, even though often in the series wind is represented as ice, regardless of the fact that not all creatures using air pressure or wind as a weapon have air that is cold, like Palumu off the top of my head. He just fills his face up with regular air and starts popping it off in random directions. He floats and shoots air. That's not ice by any means, and that's why Palumu isn't considered an ice monster, but it definitely is unique enough to be categorized separately from like a punch to the face, isn't it? Well, I mean, I think specifically what is interesting about using wind or air to classify monsters is that this one doesn't need a lasting blight type of thing. Like, you don't need a wind blight. You can instead just have monsters that use wind or air pressure be labeled as such and have it so that any attack that uses that ability has a load of knockback or something like that. I don't know. Or, I mean, if you really are insisting on having it have a blight, if you really are insisting on having it have a blight, then give it a blight that makes it so you take more knockback from attacks until you remove it. That could be a thing, I guess. You can do something fun with this. I mean, I don't know. I really like the categorization side of Monster Hunter. I like the concept of breaking down the overall list of monsters into large and small monsters, the brute wyverns, the flying wyverns, the elder dragons, the various elements and statuses within those. So even if it doesn't have a massive larger effect on the game, I would love to see monsters that predominantly fight using a certain style labeled as such, at least something as fancy as wind and air. Between all of those things though, I do still think that Earth element has the most ground to stand on as its own individual strong thing. It affects the most pre-existing monsters, it already has the groundwork done in Explore, and it is actually a very notable aesthetic theme across loads of the monsters that we already have as well. All in all, I'm not even sure that we need another element in the series. Obviously this wasn't me saying that we need this now, that's not what this video is, just bringing up a bit of a thought related to Monster Hunter Explorer and how it did its individual things. What do you think about all this? Do you think that the main series games should add a sixth element? If they do, should it be Earth, one of the others that I mentioned, or something completely unrelated of your own design? Like if you liked the video, subscribe and hit the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.